Hey there, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube. Before the video starts, I want to let you know that if you like it, to leave a like and a comment down below. And while you're at it, subscribe to the channel and click the little bell icon to be up to date with my latest content, as well as joining the Notification Squad or Wolfification Squad like this pack legend here. Thanks for your support, and enjoy the video. Starve or Curse. Feed the Soul. Chapter 4. Contemplating. As the wintered mayhem continued to engulf the forest, near its edge, the woodsy dimness was broken by escaping lights through the blinds and curtains of the lone dwelling. Its roof shingles had the appearance of a downhill ice rink, and the profusely steaming chimney gave the impression it was creating the same storm clouds in the freezy firmament. And whilst life was lying dormant and waiting the storm out, lively shadows of the two residents within dashed to and fro behind frosted glowing panes. A waterproof coat was clung to a chair, dead set in front of the dancing embers of the enclosed hearth. Summer trotted down the stairway, adjusting the hem of her gray yoga denims. Despite being outdoors for an hour, the previous pair and socks were beyond cold and clammy. So as soon as she had finished her main priorities, Summer practically dove into some dry clothes, which was definitely the second thing she was impatient for. The winter-hating woman had been submerged in enough snow and ice to last 2 lifetimes. Summer grabbed the coat's faux fur trim and, feeling it arid, hastily put her arms through the well-insulated sleeves and lifted her drying locks over her back. Buttoning her winter outwear closed, the woman walked to a white metal door in her kitchen. She detained a sharp breath and grabbed onto the doorknob, but paused when her lower calves felt recognized rustling, accompanied by the usual chirpy trill. The shadowing, concerned cat was zealous that her owner had returned home, and was becoming increasingly curious of what new and different happenings and new smells. "No, Nosy Posey, you know you're not allowed down there," corrected Summer with a restive sigh. Gently but quickly, she picked up the squeaking tortoise shell and placed her beside her bowls, and opened another ready can of her cat's favorite flavored meals. After a convinced surveillance that Posey was settled with appeasing her Grand Canyon of a stomach, the worried woman returned to the closed door, licking her still dry lips. The feeding feline's ears rotated from the soft click behind, and when she turned to find her owner was no longer in view, a queried mew was left unrequited. "Mommy?" On the other side of the substantially dense door, Summer tugged on the knob several times to make certain it was securely closed, and her teal slippers steadily made their way down the creaky wooden staircase. The cellar could have added 800 square feet under the tall, cozy Cape House, and it had been finished as a den. Nevertheless, the woman kept it tidy and clear. The floor and boiler were basically dust-free, and the painted walls had the same periwinkle hue as the rooms upstairs. The few things that were kept there were placed neatly in corners. There was a space heater and an air purifier, both set on high in the upper left, and an exercise bike and treadmill in the bottom angle. A slanting broom with a dustpan and a folding lounge chair occupied the top opposite side, while a covered old love seat rested in the parallel lower crook. Also, between the cleaning accessories and idle furniture sat a washer and dryer machine, and amongst the heat, aeration, and exercise equipment lay an extensively wide storage freezer. The minimalist didn't have any stacked boxes or useless trinkets being overrun by multiplying dust bunnies until the town's spring flea markets. It was just a bare basement, orderly and unspectacular. Except for the new centerpiece, lying dead center on the unfinished floor. Beneath a hanging, fluorescent hooded lamp, the unconscious creature lay dormant. Its neck and wrists were bound by shackles, linked to knuckle-sized chains, 3 feet in length each. The ends of the thick metal were attached to 4 large clasps that were solidly bolted down and firmly fused in the concrete. Summer took small, cautious steps until she was several meters from the beast. Robert had suggested they construct a jail. However, the type of material needed was not available. Fortunately, the chains and bolts were. Summer never probed about where the old hunter had acquired them, maybe from some extreme lore chaser's shop or something. Being a long-time handyman, Robert helped with the installation of the imprisoning links, and had bought extras in case the setup ones were incorrectly sized. Praise the Lord they weren't. Summer silently scoffed at herself. She may have become a newly self-markswoman, but a handy woman? Screw that! She'd screw her fucking foot into the goddamn floor. The woman respired deeply with an empathetic frown. Robert was amazingly supportive in all of this. She wanted to tell him so badly. But for him to be a standing witness to this, and with that heart scare, no, she'll tell him later. Hopefully. Summer was close enough to the creature in order to monitor it better, yet still safely. Right after the double dose of the banned police taser did its work, she had given the creature a heaping amount of sedatives that were kept securely wrapped in her backpack. Through hindsight, the prior social worker was accustomed to how injections were given, and acquired them with hypodermics from the nursing home just before she quit and left Delaware. The place was always overstocked with meds, therefore they'd hardly miss some extra bottles and syringes. While staring at the beast, Summer recalled how utterly backbreaking it was with securely binding its limbs and muzzle with temporary rope and hauling the overly large, limped body to her Jeep's deck lid, mentally praying for it to stay knocked out. Even after she pulled up, it was a heavy-ass task lugging and folding the creature in like a giant, gangling pretzel to fit into a miscalculated-sized oven. Then there was the strenuous task with getting it back home and dragging it to the cellar storm doors and down the stairs. Oh, thank heavens for adrenaline and staunch workouts. The woman continued to stare at the tranked beast with a discerned awareness. So, this was a Wendigo. Appreciation to almost a decade of research with Robert, she had gathered as much as she was able about the highly elusive and aggressive cryptids. They were articulated by Native Americans for centuries. While Robert, being Caucasian, didn't inherit the legends as a child, the open-minded man truly believed his great-mother-in-law's tales about the hostile beings. And ironically, his wife did not contemplate them as real. In spite of being Native American, Marilou considered the Wendigos as age-old folk stories and nothing more. Both she and her mother sadly assumed that Ben was whisked away by a hungry bear without a struggle. Summer wondered if Ben's great-grandmother could have given more insight. But the adorable Algonquin woman resided with her other daughter at a retirement community, out of state. The elder was also hard of hearing, and would most likely forever remain a novice at texting. The cryptid's physical specifics were described in various elucidations, but it wasn't distinct of which one was authentic. Summer's eyes gaped at the 12-pointer antlers atop the head of the genuine article in her presence. Well, she definitely knew now. Regardless of corporeal traits, virtually all of the literature had established on the beast's origin a cruel spirit that manifests a person who severely selfish or becomes cannibalistic and turns them into an insatiable monster that devours people, and when they do, their bodies expand to the portion of the meal. The woman could not help but rub her clamped hands over her crossed-covered arms in the warm cellar. She wasn't definite if her judder was from the mere thought of referring a human being as dinner, or the idea of her husband being forced to endure life of nothing but agony and starvation. With a quick mulling over, Summer shivered again. It was definitely from both reasons. She erudite that Wendigos prefer to hunt in winter, when prey was more vulnerable and would often use psychological tricks with voice mimicry to lure people closer from fabricated security. This was probably how Joe Brown, the hunter that went missing all those years ago, was killed and eaten. Summer didn't know the guy personally, only briefly met him during her past visits in Normandy Village before her move. However, she knew for a fact that Ben had eschewed him for spotlighting. Gesundheit. Robert found out about the disappearance when a local by the name of Mitch banged on his door asking for the whereabouts of his friend, because Joe never returned from hunting the night before. This would explain why this Wendigo was so big. Including the great antlers, the beast was over twice the height of what her husband once was. So by learnt knowledge, it made sense for it to nearly double in size after the consumption of a 6-foot man. Summer's light eyebrows knitted in heavy contemplation. That was almost 10 years ago. Wouldn't the Wendigo have resumed its predation and be even greater in size by this time? Unless the stretching and expanding of its body was so unbearable, it attempted with not eating any humans until the night, because seeing her made dearth overpower its memories of stretching torment. The woman winced and shook once again. Fuck! Talk about growing pains. That must have hurt like hell for it. No, him. Summer simply couldn't think of this beast as it anymore. This Wendigo was Ben. Other than respiratory actions, he remained motionless. Summer took 2 tentative steps forward. She saw a puddle of drivel beside his ajar muzzle, then promptly wiped the obscuring dampness from her squinting vision with a coat sleeve, after straining down the bitter bile from a wretched cough. The woman's senses were burning from the deathly foul odor every time Ben exhaled. The scent was grossly akin to a decaying smashed skunk on a hot road in August, and Ben's bony body itself was hardly any better. But in a closed-off space such as this, Summer had driven home with the windows of her four-wheeler completely down. For the first time in her life, she'd rather suffer the cold than the unbearable odor. Even with the basement's high-efficient filtration unit, the smell was still god-awful. And it was going to take time for Summer to become inured to it. The Wendigo's breathing sounded labored. The glimmering amber orbs of the woman traced every visible skeletal line, from its bumpy head, bulging collarbone, caved-in chest, down to the pelvis, protruding through thick, matted fur. Summer began to reevaluate the yowling shriek that she resented so much. Was it emanated whenever Ben was in pain? Like when his body violently grew all at once? When she heard the sound this night, was it because Ben was not able to fully eat the preyed animals, or the killed raccoon bait, and he howled from frustrated famine? Her eyes were glued on her husband's monstrous frail form. 6 healed gunshot scars were tacked on his yellowish torso and a furred hind leg. Unlike the barrel that her semi-automatic contained, the older rounds mustn't have been made of the same metal as her ammo and necklace consisted of, the latter also preventing Ben's ring from becoming lost, and Summer from losing her self-worth to the blightening ethereal essence. The woman pondered if any of the shooters beside Joe Brown had survived, and if they did, she expected no one would have believed them. For any shaky captured video or hastily unfocused pictures of a giant anorexic, antlered werewolf would almost undoubtedly be rumored as some kind of fancy, ludicrous editing. The Wendigo hadn't fed on anyone else, so maybe his hunger drove him mad, and he tried, and failed. When Summer had the beast at gunpoint, and he kept his stance, it was probably on the account that he remembered what guns did, rather than recall them when he was a human. Mythical beast or not, naturally, Ben just did not want any more pain. In the face of what she knew, the woman was angrily baffled. This curse of the Wendigo was supposed to affect the greedy or the desperate. So why, in all of unholy hell, did the spirit take her admirable husband? Ben was a wonderful man, and was proud to be an honest auto sales dealer. Summer allowed a sad chuckle to escape her. Well, most of the time he was. And he was, by all means, an honorable huntsman. Ben humbly valued the laws of nature, and any game he claimed was used for food only, and never for trophies. And he was certainly not a cannibal. She and Ben were wed in the first day of summer, and were only married 6 months when they went to visit Ben's parents for the holidays. The grieving woman could clearly recall Robert's story when he was last with her beloved. Robert and Ben had decided to go hunting for venison. During the outing, they came across an elk calf trapped in some thorny shrubs. It couldn't move, in fear of pricking itself, and the calf's agitated mother was powerlessly pacing not too far off, on a small hill. A smile ghosted the woman's lips. That sounded very much like them. They wouldn't claim the lives of a devoted mother and helpless baby. While Ben was cutting the calf free with his survival knife, Robert wanted to retrieve a new pair of hedge clippers that he recently bought from Marilou for Christmas from his nearby truck, in hopes they would make the trimming much faster. However, soon as Robert neared his vehicle, he suddenly felt extra chilled and incongruously afraid, and when the worried parent ran back, he saw the calf galloping free, and his son was completely gone, as if the winter wind whisked him away into cold oblivion. The poor older man blamed himself this entire time, from moving with his wife back to Normandy Village to leaving Ben for that life-changing single minute. Summer solemnly shook her head. Not ever did she begrudge her father-in-law for what happened. It wasn't Dad's fault. That credit went to this stupid fucking curse. It didn't matter if Robert had never left his only child's side. The spirit would have done what it wanted anyway. And Summer's soul simply couldn't afford to have lost 2 loved ones. The woman's eyelids closed forcefully. Again, why Ben? Did the spirit anticipate he was going to selfishly slaughter an elk calf and the doe, just for sport or profit? Or maybe it just took what it wanted because it was an immoral demon. Hell, it made her angelic husband grew horns, for fuck's sake. With utmost caution, Summer leaned in slightly. Ben's build had always been a bit on the lean side, but now? The commiserating, observing woman groaned. Jesus Christ, he was so withered. How on earth was Ben still alive? His vertebrae took after a jagged chainsaw. His skin looked uncomfortably tight, and there was no stomach whatsoever. The only single evidence of an abdomen was the navel centered in the concave space. And with his abysmal breathing and deep scars, this was really becoming too much for her poorly patched up heart. The former widow's right arm began to rise. She greatly desired to console her ailing beloved, but as before, common sense knew better, and she caught her moving wrist in midair. Yes, he was Ben. He was Ben. Now, he was this paranormal primal predator. When he reacted to his name, it was more probable from the actual recognition of hearing it. Sort of how parrots know their names and repetitive words, but not being fully coherent as people. Then Summer edgily gulped as her mind began to flood to the brim with contemplations. What would have happened if Ben hadn't reacted to his name? Would she have gone with what she first planned if the cryptid wasn't him and had just slain the beast that allegedly devoured her husband? And if the Wendigo was not Ben and the beast was another cursed human, would revenge truly have justified his or her death? Would it have been deliberated as murder if he or she was no longer human, but used to be human? Would Summer's conscience really have benefited from fulfilling her heated reprisal? Or worse, what if she remained with the first plan and Ben didn't know his name anymore, and she still shot him? His fur was black. Maybe the beast's hide resembled the hair color of the people they once were. What if the taser didn't affect Ben and Summer had to shoot him? Could she have lived on with knowing that she had killed her cherished, significant other? She forgot to recover her revolver during his capture. Would Summer require to get another to protect herself as a pushed last resort if the taser ever failed? While the woman rubbed her temples from her probing conscience, Her inner inquiries dissipated when she glimpsed down at Ben. His body was in the same position, but tense. His loud inhalations were withheld, and so was Summers, for she grasped that she had unintentionally advanced closer. As soon as her slipper's upper sole retouched the floor, red eyes shot open, and before she could gasp, the Wendigo lunged, subjecting the screaming woman to precipitous pain, with startled sights flashing to blinding white.